Hey y'all, this is Kobe R. Rice, and I'm actually interrupting our regularly scheduled podcasting program to bring you an update on what I call my yearly birthdays. Every single year, I will be celebrating the next sort of chapter in my life as a creative because each part of my life essentially has a day on which it was born. Rebel Ragdoll has a birthday. Rebel Ragdoll Press has a birthday. Rebel Ragdoll Productions has a birthday. My inner creative has a birthday. And every single year, I always want to come onto the podcast on the actual day that these things were born or started, or around that time, to celebrate yet another year of hustling, of being creative, and of moving my career forward. So for this particular birthday, I'm celebrating the birth of my inner creative, which was essentially born about 5 years ago, around the fall of 2012. And so this podcast is just going to deal with the growth that I've experienced over that past 5 years and what I look forward to doing over the next year and over the next 5 years. So, basically, you're getting an extra podcast this week, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you gain some inspiration from it by looking at my 5 year journey. Essentially, I am hitting the 5 year anniversary of my personal birth as a creative. I want to call it a rebirth, but honestly, thinking about it, it's really just a birth because for a very long time, I basically didn't know what I wanted to do with my creativity. And I mean, from literally the age of 10 all the way up until the age of 24, maybe even actually realistically 26, 27. I was just unsure. Like for 16, 17 years, I knew deep down inside that I wanted to be a writer, that I wanted to be creative. But of course, when you're growing up, sort of impoverished, at least temporarily, and as a woman of color, no one ever sits you down and says, you know what, boo, I think what you should do is go be a writer, go make films, go, become an independent author, go try to open a media business and try to break through boundaries that have been set by traditional media outlets and major conglomerates. Just go fight against the power, fight against City Hall, and do you. Like, nobody ever sits you down and tells you to do that. And, the narrative is usually that you should get a good education, which I did, and I am, and go get a really great career, work hard, work your way up the ladder, and then retire with a pension, with a 401k, and, be able to travel. And that is all well and good for some people. And I'm not condescending to those kinds of plans at all. Please don't get me wrong. But it really was not all that good for me personally. Sorry, I had an echo there for a second. Of course, I would love to make really great money, be comfortable, have all the typical trappings of the American dream or whatever. But the way that would happen for me, at least at this point in time, is very different today than, for example, how my parents would have asked me to do it, or how I might have been expected to do it prior. And this is not to say that the people in my life are not supportive. They completely are. My parents never ever discouraged me from going after my creativity and my creative dreams. But, just realistically, when you're trying to help your child prepare for a solid, unshakable, secure future, you don't typically put your child on the path of the arts, because the arts sometimes can be very difficult to make a career in. But since 2009, since the opening of Kindle Unlimited, since the major changes in the music industry, in the art industry, and essentially since the growth and since the evolution of the internet, artists have been finding some really incredible ways to create sustainable lifestyles based on making the kind of art that they want to make. And this is not just limited, again, to musicians, to artists, to writers, but also filmmakers are able to do this, game designers, podcasters, independent media outlets where you want to do independent news and news coverage. I mean, this age right now is such an amazing time to be an independent creator of pretty much anything, because you can reach audiences a lot more easily. You can basically retain those audiences if you know how to set up an email marketing service and a mailing list. And you are essentially able to be prolific, and not just prolific, but international, which is incredible. And I'll give you guys this tidbit. I have officially reached over 15,000 readers on my mailing list, which is incredible because, as you guys might know, if you're following my other podcasts, I started off with maybe 200 to 300 followers, 200 to 300 readers. And I have since, literally in just 9 months, been able to grow that by thousands of percent, So I was able to do that because I have the internet, because my books are available in multiple formats, and because I have a whole bunch of other authors in my community who are doing their hustle, and we all help each other to expand. And, basically, this is something that would have been pretty impossible to do prior to the advent of all of this great technology that we have. And speaking of international reach, you'd be shocked as to how many countries my readers hail from. I mean, I have people who are opening my emails and reading my books in places like South Africa, Algeria, the Czech Republic, tons of countries in Europe like Portugal, France, the UK. I've got, I believe I have a couple of people in Hungary. I have quite a few people in Asia, more than I would have expected, in the Philippines, in in Indonesia, in Australia. Obviously, my biggest followings are in the United States, Canada, and in the UK, but I have people from Russia who are reading my emails. I mean, Poland. I mean, the reach across the world is just absolutely incredible. And now more than ever are we able to build our own careers in whatever we want. And that is particularly true for artists. So I actually haven't titled this podcast quite yet, but I did want to do a very quick review because I am in such a different place than I was 5 years ago when I first decided to step into my creativity. I really want to do a sort of very quick 5-year overview of my growth as a creative. If you guys have been following this podcast, earlier on last year, I did a 6-year review of my growth for Rebel Ragdoll. But the beginnings of Rebel Ragdoll pretty much started before my personal training in my creative arts. And I just wanted to show you guys a quick before and after take and what the future might look like for, not only my growth, but like your own growth. Okay. So just consider this like a brief interlude in between what will be much more informative podcasts, tutorials, how-tos, and insights into certain aspects of the industry. So, oh my gosh, literally this time in 2012, I was so through with my graduate program and just with academia as a whole. I felt as though I had tried my best to merge the academic and the creative aspects of my life together. And unfortunately, in this particular situation, this is where the institution pretty much won out. because the academic institution, the ivory tower, is filled with people who are very brilliant, who are very good at what they do, who in many cases are nationally known in certain circles and world renowned in other circles, and are certainly the top experts in their fields. But as a part of that expertise and as a part of diving deeply into something you are passionate about, something you know a lot about, you sometimes tend to become myopic and will start, sometimes a lot of academics, and I speak freely in terms of generalizing here. I would say that most academics are very I would say assimilated into the ivory tower, or basically the only currency that matters there is your intellect and and the number of articles that you publish, which are then, and the standards for those are very particular, that those articles need to be of a certain caliber, have to have a certain kind of language. It's usually filled with sort of obscure jargon, lots of highfalutin abstract concepts, at least in the field of social sciences and political science and humanities, right? And they have to be read pretty much by everybody in your field. If your article is seen as accessible to the general public, it doesn't have as much respect as the other articles out there. And so these are the currency, like obscure articles, publishing, your CV, and your intellect. And that's all well and good, but I really needed to be in an environment where I had a diversity of currency, and I could speak directly to a public audience without getting penalized professionally. I also needed to be in a space that accepted different identities and different sort of pluralities when it came to being an academic alongside of being other things. And unfortunately, I was not in an environment that fostered diversity in how one approached their research and how one approached their creativity and how one approached making their money. As an academic, really the only real way to, again, be officially accepted as a professional academic is that you have to be literally in academia as a professor working, on a particular track. If you're seen to be holding a business or doing other things, anything outside of academia was considered to be less than. And I was tired of not being able to be diverse and be multifaceted. And so in 2012, I was still in my program, but I had decided that I was going to, by the end of that year, and that was my 4th year in my doctoral program, I was going to get a terminal master's in my field, which was sociology and research methodology. And I was going to officially make the transition from academia to a fully fledged creative life. So in 2012, I literally took my very last class in the sociology department. I basically left the social department without actually leaving it, to be really real. I was still enrolled in school. I instead just was taking creative writing classes, a playwriting class, and an intro to media production, basically a filmmaking class. Those were the classes I took in the fall of 2012. And I also was taking French at that time. And it was such a relief. That year, it was such an incredible, happy year for me. It was very freeing. I felt like I was being my true, authentic self. I was also at the head of several on-campus organizations dealing with screenwriting and filmmaking. And I basically took my first major plunge in the fall of 2012 into the pool of my own creativity. I started training myself both formally and informally in the areas of screenwriting, playwriting, filmmaking, getting to know Hollywood. And at that point, I had decided, no, I'm going to go and become a TV writer in Hollywood. I'm training, preparing myself, taking online classes, reading books, writing scripts, just, developing my project slate, just everything. I just went full force into it while also planning and preparing to make my transition out of my doctoral program by getting a terminal master's degree. So fall of 2012, man, that was like my major awakening. I had inklings of that awakening prior to the fall of 2012. Like in the spring of 2012, I did take some sociology classes, but I also took some classes outside of my department. And at that point, I had been playing around with leaving, but I hadn't decided to fully leave. So I believe I had, an ethnography class in the spring of 2012. And I also had, let's see, I'm actually looking at it right now. I was taking an advanced fiction workshop, and then I was also taking Black women writers in the English department. And at that point, I was pretty much fooling myself slash not fooling myself, because I was considering, when I hadn't decided to leave just yet, I was considering using those two classes towards my PhD minor, which would have been sociology of literature, right? So doing an English class on Black women writers, doing an English class on advanced fiction workshopping, like that certainly would have fit in perfectly with a PhD minor situation. Unfortunately, though, as I said to you, my path of study, the way that I wanted to diversify myself, was not fully accepted at the university at which I was studying. So eventually, I just said, peace out. I'm going to go do me. I'm going to take some French. I'm going to go take some amazing classes and have an amazing year. So that's what I did in the following fall. And I started to train myself and basically sort of pimp my degree as much as possible for my transition from academia into the world of creativity. And in 2012, in addition to like doing all that training, I also decided to revamp my entire perspective and goal for Rebel Ragdoll Press. Because at that point, Rebel Ragdoll Press had been established for about a year and a half, specifically with the goal of independently publishing my novel, because that was really the only goal I had creatively at that time. But then in 2012, when I started expanding myself as a creative and considering myself a novelist, a screenwriter, a filmmaker, and maybe a game designer, I also then expanded the entire premise of Rebel Ragdoll as a fempire. So these two subsidiaries were still question marks at the time, but I had definitely started thinking very strongly about creating the game development and film/TV production arms of Rebel Ragdoll. And this was essentially the start of my my downfall as an academic, but my uplifting as a creative. And throughout the years, in 2013, especially, that's when I really came out and I was just on point with everything. I had officially rebranded Rebel Ragdoll Press, at least for myself personally. I started planning the Rebel Ragdoll fashion and natural care skincare line. So yes, I had decided that very early on that I wanted a merch store. I just didn't know how to create one and sustain one. But I was still starting to develop my products. So I started developing little fashion, designs for Rebel Ragdoll using the templates available at customizedgirl.com. And that today has expanded into using not just customizedgirl.com, but also Vistaprint and Society 6. And that store has not opened yet, but please know that the store literally officially today has been 4 years in the making, just like brewing and bubbling And I started all of that planning for the fashion line for Rebel Ragdoll in 2013. I also decided that I, at some point, wanted to get into natural skincare, lip glosses, and stuff like that. Probably just natural skincare and lip glosses, to be really honest with you. And have that as a part of Rebel Ragdoll, you know. Now, skincare and all of that is a very different sort of direction. But for me, because Rebel Ragdoll was starting to awaken as a very female identified company serving the needs of creative women, I saw those needs as being multifaceted. We don't only need support and education and encouragement in creating novels and publishing and filmmaking and designing games and owning our own businesses, but we also love to look good, to feel positive, and to feel uplifted, and to just feel beautiful and look beautiful, you know? So I really wanted my brand to encapsulate that side of Rebel Ragdolldom, you know? So that is still very much in process and in progress. And you know, I don't know when the skincare line will come out. It's going to be a very simple one because I use natural products. I like cocoa butter. I like shea butter. I like sugar scrubs, you know, things like that. Honey, olive oil, coconut oil. Like it would be very simple, but, you know, simple, beautiful, elegant solutions to, you know, both inner and outer beauty. And that will be forthcoming when my entire merch store opens, which hopefully will be at some point probably in 2019. I think I'm going to aim for like the summer of 2019. That sort of makes sense. Those products will be available. And so that started about 4 years ago today. I also developed in 2013 like the official Rebel Ragdoll development slate. And at that point, I think I only had about maybe 7 to 10 projects on it. And today I literally have nearly 200 projects that I want to do on it, which again shows you the growth over the past 4 years with regard to my ideas and all the things that I want to do creatively. I also, that same year in 2013 was a major, huge year for me. I published 3 IPs, intellectual properties, under my Kobe R. Rice brand, which is my sci-fi and fantasy novelist brand. And those 3 IPs essentially are the 3 books I published for the books of Ezekiel. So even though I have rebranded the books of Ezekiel since then, this was the year where I had first decided to divide the long book I had been writing into 2 separate books, and also just keep them together as an omnibus. So you had the volume 1 of the book, volume 2, and then you had volumes 1 and 2 together. So those were the 3 IPs. You know, in 2015, just to sort of stay neat with the podcast, I had decided to rebrand each of those separate books into their own standalone books. So they became volume one became The Given, volume 2 became The Taken, and the omnibus volume became Ghosts of Koa. And that was 2015. Now in 2017, I'll be rebranding the books of Ezekiel for a final time. This is going to be the last time, basically because the entire structure of the series has been changed and pretty much solidified, such that there are 40 books in the entire series, but then you know, each of those 40 books, like a set of 3 to 4 books, or maybe even like 3 to 7 books, depending on what the arc looks like, they will be all put together into 10 separate book bundles. And each of those book bundles has its own name, its own arc. Even though they're all comprised of the 40 books that are in the series, each collection of books has its own sort of story it follows. So it was important for me to make that distinction when, you know, collating and bundling all of my novels into separate arcs. But we will talk about that rebrand in another podcast, because it's sort of difficult to explain. It's a lot easier to look at it and understand what I'm doing with it now. But because the Books of Ezekiel project is essentially my debut baby project, it's like my baby. It's the one that like I put pretty much most of my investment in with regard to time, with regard to branding, with regard to positioning it to be a multimedia franchise. And this is not to say that I won't look at other properties for that kind of opportunity, but the Books of Ezekiel was designed specifically to be the longest running series that I will ever write in my lifetime. It was also designed to be translatable to both film and television, and it's also specifically designed to be translatable into a series of AAA games if you play PlayStation, Xbox, or Steam, or you use a PC. So it's also designed for merch. It's pretty much designed specifically to become Rebel Ragdoll's biggest multimedia franchise. And so that is the series that I put a lot of my focus on, my effort on, when it comes to branding and when it comes to developing unique ways of creating fantasy, particularly epic fantasy. So that's been an exciting journey working with the Books of Ezekiel over the past essentially 4 years. And as much as I sort of kick myself for not being able to publish more books over the past 4 years, I have been able to do a lot of other major things with the Books of Ezekiel that I am extremely proud of. And the third book, thankfully, will be coming out this year. So I'm trying to figure out how to how to up my productivity, because I cannot be coming out with just one book a year if there are 40 books. I will literally be writing this for 40 years, and ain't nobody got time for that. So I'm going to try to up my production to about 4 to 5 books a year. We'll see what happens with that, though. Anyway, this is also the year that I developed just a few ideas for game design and game development for Rebel Ragdoll. I didn't know what my game development subsidiary would be called. I just knew that I had a few ideas for games. I had been discussing a couple of them with a potential co-writer, and that relationship pretty much fell through. But I was just sort of dipping my toe back into game development. Now, mind you, prior to this, in 2009 was the first year that I literally started expressing interest in game design and game development. And that was the year that I brought my 3D game development tome, which is almost 2,000 pages of how to develop a 3D game from scratch. And it came with some preformed assets, and it's great. And it's something I still want to work through. I also that year invested in the Game Institute, which is another amazing comprehensive online course geared specifically towards teaching you every single aspect of game design, from programming to 3D modeling to creating textures to physics. And so those two major resources, along with a couple of others I've picked up along the way, I haven't delved so deeply into it quite yet. My ultimate dream would be actually to get a team together and we do it together, like a game design learning sort of group that maybe meets every week or every 2 weeks to work on this game. That's my little pipe dream. But in this year, 2013, these ideas were just literally developing. So on a personal level, I did a lot of really great things in 2013 for my own personal growth and myself. I not only traveled to LA for the first time and met with actual working industry professionals, which was amazing. I had a lot of really great overseas adventures with my second trip abroad, which has always been a great impact on me. My adventures were much more concentrated this time. I was able to do a bunch of cool stuff. I went gun training in Budapest at Celeritas Shooting. It's a shooting range, and it was my first experience with shooting an actual, not just a gun, but a series of guns. And so this was essentially a research trip for not only the Books of Ezekiel, but just in general. I did that. I went alchemy hunting actually across Europe by looking into actual alchemy labs at Heidelberg Castle and some other places, and I took pictures that I've yet to post actually, and that was a lot of really great fun, just doing that, taking pictures, learning a lot about alchemy and how it developed in Europe, and again that was specifically for the Books of Ezekiel.
I did like a lot of really cool stuff for me. I took like my first pole dancing classes. It was like a really wonderful year of awakening for me personally. I had one in 2011, then I had like another for 2013. And I also claimed my identity as a writer producer of film TV. I hadn't really admitted at this point that I wanted to direct film because I was like a little bit too afraid. That actually doesn't come until like a few years later. But yeah, I also got my master's of science in sociology. As I told you guys before, I took a whole bunch of creative courses, which were incredible. I actually started creating courses for breaking into Hollywood, not because I had experience with actually breaking in, but because I had read at that point so much about like everything, filmmaking, TV writing, how to break into the industry. I felt as though I could teach undergraduates, what they needed to do according to industry professionals. And actually, after speaking to some industry professionals, a lot of my courses were spot on, in terms of how to break in traditionally. I have since actually, now that we get to it, have come into myself in a very different way with regard to breaking into Hollywood. I decided I wanted to build my own Hollywood, my femin wood or whatever, my female wood, I don't know what you would call it, my ragdoll wood, my rebel wood, I don't know. But I decided that traditional Hollywood was not really for me in terms of trying to break into it full time. If I ever got an opportunity, I certainly would probably take it as long as it's healthy for me. But I decided since then that I did not want to have to work a job from like the mailroom and hope that I would get seen over the next 20 years and get put into a writer's room or whatever. Like, I'm just not about that. That time that I spend basically climbing my way up the ladder, I could be spending creating my own properties and producing my own work, building my own audience and following, and building my own business. And I'm not knocking anyone who chooses to go and break into Hollywood and, via the traditional route. I'm not knocking you at all. Godspeed and good luck. But the reason I say this is because I'm watching Hollywood very closely, and I am seeing a lot of things that I do not like. I don't like how the diversity of films, and I don't even mean racial diversity, although that is a problem too, but just the diversity in the types of films has literally gone down to zero. I enjoy a superhero tentpole film just like any other movie lover. I'm not that person who has a hierarchy of sort of films. I mean, there's certain films that impact me a little bit more deeply emotionally that, I feel like are more meaningful, but I'm not a film snob at all. Like, I enjoy most genres of film as long as they're entertaining and, with a special focus on like action and sci-fi. But like, when we're just reproducing things, when we're just rebooting old favorites, when we're only, putting out, Marvel and DC properties, when we're only readapting or adapting work that has already been out there, I start to lose interest. Like, we need all those things, but we also need some fresh new voices, some fresh perspectives. I want to like be wowed by a new voice and a new perspective. So I've actually turned more towards looking for those voices on the indie market. Like The Raid, for example, which is my most favorite action movie, my favorite action thriller of all time. Like, of all time. The Raid and The Raid 2 actually take the number 1 and number 2 spots. That was created independently. I mean, they might have had some traditional funding, but that didn't have a Hollywood release. That did not get all the attention of the distributors, worldwide. It was a cheaply made but very well done movie set in, I believe it was like Indonesia or something like that. Basically previewing a martial art that I have not seen in America before. Now, this doesn't mean that it didn't exist, but I have not seen it. We've seen Kung Fu, we've seen Wushu, we've seen Karate, we've seen Jiu-Jitsu, we've seen a whole bunch of, we've just seen like brawling, boxing, street fighting. We've seen those kinds of art forms. We've transported, Hong Kong action to the United States with relative fantastic success, especially amongst niche audiences like the Black community. But we had not seen that sort of courting of a different style. And the style is gorgeous. It's amazing. It's powerful. It's beautiful. And the storyline was amazing. The cinematography was amazing. The editing was amazing. The acting was amazing. It was just all amazing. This is like it literally was the perfect movie. And I said, damn, like this. And on top of it, it was produced much more cheaply because they did it outside of the United States in a country that is essentially sort of developing, and things sort of come more cheaply. And I'm just like, damn, if I can make movies like this on my own dime and on my own budget, I don't need Hollywood. The Raid is actually what literally flipped the switch on in my mind and told me, Venetia, or excuse me, in this case, you can call me Kobe, but Venetia's my actual name. Venetia/Kobe, this is what you're meant to do. This is your voice. Like, I literally saw my voice being played out on the television screen when I was watching this movie. And that is the moment I realized I could direct and I could be an independent filmmaker. So, again, for those of you going into Hollywood to try to like win an opportunity to write for a TV series or write a feature or film a feature or whatever, produce a feature, that's great and good. Like I highly encourage you to keep applying, to keep hitting the pavement. But also, like, you really need to feel free to do your own thing, and you need to continue to do your own thing, so that you're not sitting waiting around, for 10 years for an opportunity that you can make yourself. You're sitting around waiting for the studio to hire you to write the feature film of your dreams when you could actually be producing 2 to 3 feature films of your dreams every single year. And I mean, with the writing, you can hire somebody to help you sort of edit it, and get like a story consultant or whatever, script consultant under the table, help to make it more marketable, and film it and shoot it. You can do that, and you can make money off of that. So I don't know. I mean, my thing is to, if you're going to go after the traditional folks, do it in a 2-pronged way, basically. But I have decided it wasn't even in 2017. It was pretty much when I had become a stay-at-home mom. And it was kind of smack in the middle of 2015 that I realized I wanted to do my own thing and build my own company instead of just waiting to, be seen by Hollywood. Because I realized as a stay-at-home mother that there is really no place that is carved out for us in the industry. I mean, basically, like, you have to, in my opinion, if you're a single mom trying to make it, you have to have money. Because you need to be able to hire a nanny for those endless days where you're going to have to stay at the studio or at the writer's room until midnight or whatever. And you just, if you don't have family in Los Angeles, like your mom or your parents who are willing to, watch your child every single time you have to stay late at work, then you need to have some kind of support or some kind of money to hire a nanny. Now, if you are able to get a really big Hollywood job, most writers can actually afford a nanny because they pay writers very well in Hollywood. But just starting out, I mean, as a single mom, I'm not saying it's impossible at all, but to me, I feel like it's more viable to try to build my own thing, because then I can be the kind of creative that I want, and also, manage financially, emotionally, and physically the demands of motherhood. So anyway, moving on, because I want to not make this too long. I'll be off in a few minutes, but 2013, like I said, that's the year that I had the birth of most of my ideas that have since evolved into bigger concepts on the project slate for Rebel Ragdoll. I published 3 properties. I had quite a few jobs working in different aspects of independent entertainment. I was a line producer and an executive producer on a few projects that year. I applied to some fellowship programs and found out what that was about. I also produced a play festival, which was amazing. It was just a really incredible year. I got my first film credits on IMDb, and then I added 3 more. I came into myself, as I said, as a writer producer. And since then, the only thing I have done really from 2013 and on what it has grown basically is grow. That's all I've been doing. Even when I had to take a break and focus on being a mother to this beautiful new child in my life, I basically had to take a step back, but I also it allowed me to reevaluate a lot of the things that I wanted. And even though I felt somewhat disempowered career wise while being stuck at home with a baby, I actually became more empowered career wise because I realized that I wanted to own everything that I did. I wanted to be the boss of myself. I wanted to be in charge of Kobe R. Rice, the brand, and in charge of Rebel Ragdoll, the growing fempire. And I wouldn't have really come to that conclusion, I don't think, had I not had my daughter, had I not had to reevaluate how to break into entertainment, and if I had not had to basically figure out how to create a sustainable creative life while also being a good mother. Like if I hadn't had to consider those things, Rebel Ragdoll would not be what it is today. And I'm not saying it's this major media conglomerate, but it's certainly becoming something I am super proud of. Today we are officially, like literally officially established up, at least on my Kobe R. Rice website and my New Adult Noir Net website, as a multimedia brand comprised of 5 subsidiaries that deal with publishing, that deal with game development and game design, film and TV production, creative education and training, and we have a philanthropic and charitable arm, which will help other single creative mothers to come into their own power. And I'm really proud of what I have done thus far. And this year, we're officially going to reincorporate and reorganize Rebel Ragdoll. I'm gonna dissolve the branch in Wisconsin, and I'm going to hopefully in the next couple of months incorporate officially both the Rebel Ragdoll brand as well as all 5 subsidiaries. And that's going to be pretty exciting, and I'll keep you guys updated on that. For my fiction, I also eventually ended up producing audiobooks and print books for my existing IPs for Rebel Ragdoll Press. And I'm going to actually be doing 2 more print books, one for the gift, actually 3 more, actually 4 more, assuming that I publish these next 2 novels in the next 3 months. I'll be producing print books for The Given, The Taken, and Hollow Point, which are the first 3 standalone novels in the Books of Ezekiel series, as well as for Rose and John Doe's, which is the first novel in the Hitmen of Happily Ever After series. And just catching up with that. So slowly but surely, we build and build and build. And so what Rebel Ragdoll is today is what I generally tend to call my growing media fempire. Growing media fempire. And some people might laugh or giggle or chuckle at that, which is totally fine. But I know that every single day I am working towards my goals. I want to be a boss. I am a boss. I am developing my own brand as an author. As a filmmaker, officially now we are working on our first film for Rebel Ragdoll Productions, which is a psychological horror and paranormal horror sort of movie called Sandman. And it's very real, y'all. It is extremely real and near and dear to my heart, and I'm excited about it. We're doing that. We're working on publishing more novels. We're doing our audiobooks. We also this year have established, I guess, sort of like a new branch of Rebel Ragdoll. I mean, essentially it's an extension of Rebel Ragdoll Press, but we've established New Adult Noir, which is a book blog and author promotion services company that deals with promoting, reviewing, and just celebrating dark and gritty sci-fi fantasy horror and sci-fi fantasy horror romance. And that has been really successful. In just under 3 months, we became a 4-figure business. It's a very low 4 figures, but it's still a 4-figure business. And I expect it to be a high 4-figure business by the end of the year, especially with the few promos that we have going on. And that has been really encouraging, just having New Adult Noir and Rebel Ragdoll Press working in tandem to help pay these bills and to help create some kind of ongoing income for the company as a whole. I mean, that's for me, a major development since 2012, to be able to say that 5 years later, we have a mid to high 4-figure business, and that Rebel Ragdoll as a media brand and conglomerate is bringing in a high 4 figures, for me is a major accomplishment for somebody who basically is like working, I wouldn't call it a job, but it feels like a job, who's in graduate school, who has a very, very rigorous TA-ship. I literally just finished grading over 1,000 assignments and I have 400 to go. And, like, I'm doing it by myself. And I'm doing it by myself, but I'm still able to work on my novels, my films, and create a mid to high 4-figure business. Like, to me, that's pretty incredible. And I am going to give myself credit for that, while also being a single mother. I mean, come on, y'all. Like, single moms are out here being, entire freaking deities and shit. You know what I'm saying? And y'all just need to recognize. And I'm not even saying it's just me. Lots of single moms are out there on this exact same hustle. And that is exactly why I am building Rebel Ragdoll to be what it is, because we need that support. We need that encouragement. And we need to help each other and support each other. And that is what Rebel Ragdoll is going to be about. So I'm super excited for what's coming up. New Adult Noir will also probably, even though it's an extension of Rebel Ragdoll Press right now, I am strongly considering making it its own brand and its own subsidiary, which is kind of crazy because I only wanted 5, but because New Adult Noir focuses right now on novels, I really also would like to focus on celebrating and helping readers discover dark comics, dark manga. I want to help them discover, dark and gritty films. So at some point, we're also going to develop a New Adult Noir film sort of leg. I'm not sure how that's going to look. It'll all be under the title of New Adult Noir, but we're going to expand from written and printed media to, motion pictures, to TV, to dark and gritty TV, to dark and gritty film, to dark and gritty games. We're going to have New Adult Noir games. So, and again, this is about helping readers and consumers of media to find the amazing, kick-ass, dark and gritty content that they love to consume. And so we don't only read dark, gritty content. We also watch it. We also play it. And this is very much in league with my brand as a whole and my growth as a creative, and Rebel Ragdoll's growth. And so you can see how everything here is evolving. It continues to evolve. And even though, for example, Chick Rogue Studios, which is the game outlet and the game arm of Rebel Ragdoll, even though we won't be officially opening until 2020, I am still finding ways to train like a damn ninja in game development. In 2015, that's when I first started my first major foray into games, and I produced a portfolio of game writing that is literally over 100 pages. So you have some prose samples, you have some script samples and like dialogue samples, and you also have some mission samples. And basically 2015 was like ninja training for the writing aspect of game design, and I'm only gonna keep pushing forward on the other aspects of it so I can know how all the parts fit together when I'm running a team. And so it's just been really amazing, having my founding year of Transcendent Trilogies, having the founding year this year of New Adult Noir, having a founding year, which is this year, of Rebel Ragdoll Productions. It's just been really, really incredible. And the Transcendent Trilogies projects, by the way, is still on and going. That's the project wherein I'm trying to create as many diverse, kick-ass sci-fi, fantasy, and horror trilogies as possible and just put them out in the world for free, basically is what I'm trying to do. For at a certain point, when we start making enough money off the project, that's when we'll offer all of our trilogies for free. Because I just want more diversity out there in sci-fi and fantasy and horror, especially with the trilogies that we have seen recently, which have been great. Hunger Games, Divergent, all these other trilogies that are making waves, are Maze Runner, are incredible. But I need to see more people who are diverse, not just in race and in gender, but in able-bodiedness and religion and different walks of life. And so that is still ongoing. We had a founding year for The Bohemian Badass, and that's why you guys are even listening to this podcast, because the Be Badass podcast came out of me wanting to reach out, provide encouragement, education, and inspiration for those of you who are interested in creating sustainable careers as artists. So we had our founding year in 2015, and as much as my podcasting and my posting has been intermittent on The Bohemian Badass, please know and believe that there are always things going on. We are always pushing forward, So in 2016, we started holding our first master classes. We started developing our first signature course. We soft launched this podcast. We were developing the brand and the company logo and the banners and all this cool stuff. And it was great, especially hosting those live master classes. I really enjoyed it. It's very tiresome, but I really, really enjoyed it. And we just kept repackaging, rebranding, and just revamping what we're doing here. And we're going to keep doing that until we hit on that perfect note. Because you guys know me. I do not like brands that are not tight and that are not on point. I really love creating brands that are tight, that are consistent, that are impactful, and that are unique. And the Bohemian Badass is no different with regard to me holding it to high standards. So we've also been developing a series of courses, not just one course, but a whole bunch of courses at the Bohemian Badass. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. I think Hey Siri just thought I was talking to it, but I'm not. That's why you hear that craziness in the background. Unless there's like a ghost, which is like hella scary, but whatever. It is what it is. So that's basically what's been going on. We also have been developing, just in a conceptual way, the programs and the fellowships at the Dollhouse, which is as I said to you guys before, the charitable and philanthropic arm of the Bohemian Badass. So we've created, at least conceptually again, the Villa Scholarship for moms and single moms. We've created the Single Creative Scholarship. I forget their names. I need to actually come up with better names of these scholarships. But we're developing scholarships. This year, I'm actually looking to turn it into an actual foundation so that 10% of all of my income goes directly into the foundation, so I can start giving out at least small scholarships to women, single moms who are trying to be creatives. And we also designed the Collaborative Arts Festival, which will be one of our community development programs. So that's really, really fun and amazing. And just along with all that creative development, I've also just grown so much personally and as a mother, and just like in terms of growing into a fully fledged adult and a fully fledged sort of like person outside of all of these creative things, like just knowing how to manage and maintain just life, which is important because a lot of us are workaholics and we don't really take care of ourselves, our bodies, our families, our needs, or just our lives in general. And while our companies are doing great, sometimes for a lot of us, our lives are in shambles. And I'm really trying my best to become the more balanced person. Now, you can never really achieve true balance because when you're focusing on one thing, another thing will inevitably suffer. But I have decided to accept the fact that I'm going to be unbalanced and unbalancedly balanced. I don't know if that's even like a word, but I'm making that a thing. And make sure to address those areas of my life that need addressing If if certain things come up, okay, the business is going to have to be put on hold for a couple of days while I handle this, or while we recuperate from this cold that just went through the house or whatever. And so, I'm just really excited and really looking forward to the next 5 years of my growth as a creative, the next, 4 years with regard to the development of Rebel Ragdoll, because we did officially incorporate the press in 2011, and I'm excited to see where it'll be in 2021. So it's just, yeah, like in 2022, I'll do like another 5 years, or I guess a 10-year update as to how I've grown as a creative. And hopefully things would have grown to be much more prolific and intense over that time. And I don't know, guys, I'm just really excited. I'm really excited. I'm excited to also finish this degree, and really like just have all of this intellectual and artistic power behind me and this training behind me. So there are a lot of really wonderful things coming up for the future. I have really grown a lot since 2017. This is supposed to be really short, but I guess it's not. I've expanded my brand in a ridiculous way. And really, only more wonderful things are coming in the future. We're going to be establishing Chick Rogue Studios over the next 5 years, keep expanding and solidifying Rebel Ragdoll Press, definitely have our courses and our books out for The Bohemian Badass over the next 5 years. I definitely would like to at least have 1 to 3 scholarships up and running at the Dollhouse over the next 5 years that are consistently giving out scholarships. And definitely, I want to have directed, I would say, at least 3 to 4 films over the next 5 years. So, we're doing the damn thing, and we're trying to do our best to empower women in the ways that are important. And I look forward to updating you guys, not anytime soon, but maybe in a couple of years, in a few years, as to how far we've come as a company. And I can only imagine what The Bohemian Badass will look like 5 years from now. So that is my growth and evolution as a creative from 2012 up until 2017. And I think what I'm going to do too is actually, along with this podcast, give you guys a downloadable template. As a matter of fact, I will do that. A downloadable template. It's called Tracking Your Growth as a Creative. And this is the template that I'm using to keep track of everything that I'm doing creatively, my companies, my properties, my brands, and what has been going on each year in those companies. And I'm using that to basically track what is happening so that I can look back and see how much I've grown. This is especially useful for if I'm feeling kind of down or feeling, self-flagellating about what I'm not doing. It's really nice to look back over this stuff and see how I am growing. And I want to offer this to you guys as a free gift, a free opt-in gift. Just for being on the podcast, for listening to this one. And you guys can use this and edit it and update it as you wish to update it, and track your own personal growth. So you can look back every year, every 5 years, every 10 years, every 20 years, and see what you've done over your lifetime. So with that, I bid you guys a fond farewell. I'm going to go and, of course, work on some graduate school stuff, because that's how it's rolling right now. I gotta do some reading and then do this 4-page paper and all this other stuff before I have to pick up my daughter. But in any case, thanks so much for staying with me, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Stay badass, and I will keep you guys in my thoughts. Hopefully you will keep me in yours when you come back to get your next podcast. All right. Peace out, guys. Love you. Stay creative, stay badass, and I'll talk to you guys soon.